When people come to me and ask, like, should I start a partnership? I still kind of answer with, like, it's your call, man. Like, do I think you need them to get what you want in life? No. But if that's what you want to do today and it gets you started, then dude, just do it, man.
Right.
Just do it, because it's enjoyable, and splitting the profits with somebody it's fine. It's fine. Like, if it's what feels right to somebody, I always encourage them to do it. But it was some of the funnest times I've ever had, man.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Probate House Guy podcast. I'm Brad Woodall, the Probate House Guy. We're here with another episode today. I'm here with my buddy Travis Oglesby out of actually Illinois now. I know Travis from Georgia, but he's here today to talk about his journey and evolution as a real estate investor into the creative space, and we got a whole lot of other nuggets along the way. So, Travis, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about you. What do you do? Where'd you get started? All that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, man. I would probably say, like, who am I? I feel like I'm a stay-at-home dad anymore than anything else. But I do some real estate too. And so let me see here. So my company is called Tabby's Properties. Okay. We had one before that with 3 partners, and I think we'll kind of touch on that a little bit later. But today it's called Tabby's Properties. We flip and buy creatively throughout the entire Southeast. So we do the full state of Georgia, Northern Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Chattanooga. And today we buy probably 60, 70 homes a year. And we do a lot of flipping and owner financing the homes. And I think we're going to start transitioning from flipping to wholesaling to generate the revenue to be able to do it. I just haven't seemed to been that good of a flipper lately, as we talked about at the beginning of the call.
What is a good flipper, right? Like, define a good flipper. You say good flipper. What does that even mean, right?
Yeah, I think a good flipper means you bought homes in 2021 and sold them in 2021, because you could make money no matter what. But no, I mean, to me, a good flipper is somebody that's on time, on budget, and puts out a quality product. And I do think we do all of the above. I think we're just entering a little bit of a different time than what we were before. And we are not half bad at owner financing homes. And we've got about 92 of them now in the portfolio. And I'd like to start leaning towards doing that just more.
Sure.
Than flipping at this point.
And as you know, right, when you do this business, like, not everything is a good fit for owner financing. Some things, it just makes a little bit better sense to maybe flip it. But like you, I mean, sometimes you're banging your head against the wall flipping stuff. Like, I flip too, but I also set a goal for myself last year, and it said I'm not going to take on more than 3 flips at a time. Like, so when I hit my 3 flips and I have those 3 flips in the pipe, everything else gets wholesaled or wholetailed, and I only do 3 rehabs at a time. And then when I sell one, then another one jumps into that spot. And that's like how I can keep my sanity, because if I do more than that, I'm like, I want to like strangle someone, because like doing flips is enraging sometimes when you're dealing with buyers and you're dealing with contractors and the things that happen. Like I was telling you off camera, like I had one of mine flood the other day. So I'm redoing a shower and had to get the mitigation people in and dry the place out and all that. And we're supposed to close next week. And it's like, oh my God. So, it gets a little crazy. So I feel you there, man. As long as you're flipping and you're doing things ethically and you're making money, and you're doing that consistently, I mean, I call that a good flipper. You don't have to be putting out like the most amazing HGTV stuff and I don't. My flips, like, nothing to write home about. So
yeah. Well, actually, ask me next week, and I'll probably love flipping. So I mean, it just depends on what happened this morning, what I love in the afternoon.
Sure. This business is like sometimes an emotional roller coaster. It's weird, especially flipping is. The other stuff, even the owner finance stuff, it can be that, like, when you deal with some of these people that you're like, especially when you advertise a property for sale and people are blowing up your phone and they don't have any money, and
yeah, like, I want to buy it though.
Right, well, I'm sure you do, but I need money to sell you this house. Yeah. You have to like give me money in exchange, your down payment money. So why don't you talk about like when you started getting into creative deals and how that journey evolved over the years, and like where did that take you? Like, I mean, people talk about creative and everybody's in Pace Morby's group and it's all a bunch of newbies, but like when you're really doing those kinds of deals, like it takes a little bit of expertise and it's a skill that you learn over time. So
yeah, and it's interesting that you said, like, we have such emotional roller coasters in what we're doing, because so much of this business, and I feel like for almost like with anything, it seems like it's so heavily mental versus, like actually a tip or a trick or a tactic. Like, I think those are helpful to know, but it's just like, do you have the, grit? Do you have the wherewithal? Like, do you have it to where it can't ruin your entire day? Like we talked about earlier, like I still have it to where it like bums half my day out. And then you come back to the fact of like, I see my kids jumping on the trampoline. I'm like, what, I'm not going to remember this house in a couple months anyway. And so you always end up coming back to like either the things that matter, or you realize, that didn't go as planned. Here's what I'm going to do about it. I'll take care of it at that point. And I think that's what kind of led me into creative finance. Was I started out wholesaling and flipping with two buddies, and we ran that. We got fingernail paint, a bloody finger. It's my daughter was painting my fingers this morning.
Nice.
And so we started out wholesaling and flipping, and weren't too bad at it, really. Like, we would put the time in, we would hustle, like we could get the house under contract, and this was 8 years ago, and then we would sell it for 10 grand. Because that was always the common thing. We would always just sell it for like 10 grand, even if it was maybe worth more, but you just didn't know how to sell it. It was
right.
Like, I know Brad goes to Starbucks at noon, so I'm going to take my contract there and be like, hey, you want this house for 10 grand?
Right.
Type of thing. And so we did that for 3 years, and, probably about 3.5. And we did good, but it seemed like I always was kicking the profits down the road. Like, I just never was really like making much. I'd make, between the three of us, we would pay ourselves like $3,000 or $4,000 a month, and that was enough to get by on.
Sure.
Right? Like, we weren't all married, but we all had like significant others at that time. I think I was engaged and to my wife, and it just seemed like we were like, oh, well, that house sells, we'll make 100 grand. Well, that's okay. Let's roll it into that next house. When that house sells, maybe we'll make 20 grand. And it was just this never-ending kicking down the road. And one day, a friend called me from Texas, and said, hey, you look tired in your social media videos. I have a guy you need to meet. And he just left it at that. He didn't tell me anything about real estate. And this guy's name was Brad from Nashville, Tennessee. And,
yeah.
And so then I started reaching out to this guy left and right. He would never reply back to me. I heard he had like this apprenticeship and did things differently and this and that and this and that. And finally, the dude messaged me back, and, we had to send him videos and do all this like different qualification stuff. And then he took us on. And then that was 2019. And man, the day I learned Sub 2 and how to really structure a deal, and how to pitch and not sell, it changed my life. And that has carried us for the next 5 years, and built that. However many homes are in there, 90 some wraps at this point, and still adding, 1 or 2 a month. It's changed our lives.
So was that a gradual like transition, or did one day you say, you know what, we're just going to focus on creative and do that now? Like, what was that transition like?
Mentally, I said, you know what, I'm only doing stuff. I'm never doing another thing. But no, man, it was definitely gradual. It's been gradual forever. I've tried turning it off several times and selling, like, because, there's so much to the note world. When you learn Sub 2, man, that's like as basic as it gets.
Sure.
In notes, you can sell fronts, backs, trade. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do note investing on that end of things. And so I've tried probably 3 times to make it the only thing that I do. And I still haven't really got to it at this point. If it was just me running the company, sure, that'd be no problem. But we got a team of 6 today. Everybody's well paid, and to cover salaries, I mean, the 94 notes barely even take care of everybody's salaries at this point.
Right.
So we're still flipping, and it's still a gradual process for us.
Nice. And you were telling me kind of offline that you guys do lease options, you do contract for deeds, you do real owner financing, all the above. So kind of for people who don't understand what that is, like kind of what's the difference on just a 30,000 foot view of the three different things? Because creative finance encompasses a lot of things, right?
Yeah. And so let's say we bought a house or you know what, where do we want to start? Let's start sub 2. So let's say we bought a home sub 2. So what that means, guys, is like a lot of people have mortgages on their homes and they don't have much equity in their house. And so what we do is we target like low equity pre-foreclosures because no investor, no flipper, no wholesaler is going to target them, but we can. And so if they have a 2 or 3% rate on their home, we will buy their house. We might give them a couple $1,000 and walk away, maybe catch up their mortgage for a couple grand. We get the deed, the debt stays in their name. And now I am making payments to Wells Fargo for them every month. And we own the home. So now I get to buy a house for $200,000. It may have cost $5 or $15,000 to buy it out of pocket. And now I'm the one making the $1,200 monthly mortgage payment to Wells Fargo. So now we own the house. And let's say we did a lease option on it. That's just simply where think of it like a rent to own. So they give us like $3,000, $5,000, $7,500 down.
It's not down. Don't say down.
Oh, you're right. It's an option. They'll give us that as an option. Thank you. And unrecord that part and the $3,000 option fee, and then they'll pay $1,500 to $1,700 a month, and we do that for 12 months, and then once they can come up with the remaining down payment fee, we'll transition them to a contract for deed at that point. So it's kind of like a little trial period that we'll do for people for 12 months. And then once I don't like using the word like proven themselves, but once they do what they said they were going to do, we transition them to a contract for deed, and then they own that puppy.
Nice. I'm kind of doing that trial for the first time, except I'm going from contract for deed to true owner finance right now on a deal.
Nice.
Bought a mobile home down on some land in South Georgia. And I had a buyer, and then someone came and like stole some metal off of the garage, and he like backed out of the contract, so then I had to find another buyer. Anyways, I found a buyer, and I was selling it for $70,000 on seller financing. I had advertised on Facebook and whatever, and I found somebody down there to like do the showings for me. And I always want 10% down. So I wanted $7,000 down, and then the rest would be financed over. I basically calculated, okay, what would this place rent for? Okay, as long as their payment is this amount, then that's how I back into their payment is what would the house rent for, right?
Yeah.
So I did that, and I found a buyer, but he was a friend of the landscape guy that had been mowing the property for me while I was trying to sell it, right? I found a landscaper down there. This was like a friend of his from the Army, and he had $4,000. And normally I'm like, no, they need the whole thing. But I was like, well, $4,000 is still, for a $70,000 house, $4,000 is a pretty, decent chunk, for a down payment. So I said, okay, I'll do $4,000, but you have to pay me the other $3,000 over the next 12 months. So we're going to add it onto your payment every month. So I did a contract for deed for 12 months. And then at the end of the 12 months, once he's paid me off, or if he pays me off early for the $3,000, then we actually roll it to a true owner finance. He gets title, I get lien position, I get a note, that sort of thing. So that's the first time I've done one like that. Usually I'm just like hard no, but this property was like kind of taking longer to sell than I thought. And I mean, mainly because it was so far away, and it was like the last thing on my mind because I don't have like a team built out to like do that. It's just me doing it.
Yeah.
But guess what? I paid $25,000 for this property.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you did that though, because so many of us will confuse, and this was something. So I've learned now that I finally I have this amazing team in place. It's like I've learned certain things that I never knew before because I have a little bit of time back at this point. And it's like what you did there. So we do step-up plans for people all the time. Okay, your first 12 months, it's $1,200 a month. I'd have to have you at $1,700. So over the next 3 years, I'm going to increase you $100 a month. And so you still get the buyer with the $20,000 or $30,000 down payment, and you give them the payment that they want, and then you just step them up over time. And what I've noticed, and so it's like called an adjustable rate rider. So you would just continuously increase them. But what it goes back to is like, it's whenever we got into real estate, I thought equity was in the price of the home, right? Like how good of a discount can you get on that home?
Sure.
And now I realize there is way more equity in terms.
Yep.
For anything. And so I think once people can understand that, because a lot of people doing a lot of transactions do understand that, but whenever you're just starting out, you're like, oh, I thought I had to buy the house at 50 cents on the dollar. That's what everybody on YouTube does. And it's like, well, kind of, that would be good if you can do that. But we don't buy a lot of homes at 50 cents on the dollar.
Right.
And so if you can realize how to do things differently than everybody else, then you get to have things that are different than everybody has. And so anyway, I wanted to add that point.
Yeah, and then you have less competition too. So let's roll into marketing now. So you guys started doing direct seller marketing years ago. We met each other through Investor Fuel mastermind group, and that's all about, really a lot of that's about marketing and all that stuff. So you learn to do marketing to get leads, and you still do that today. So why don't you talk about like kind of how you started doing marketing originally and what you're doing now, and how's that's evolved over time?
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's like never ending evolved, right? Because texting used to be like the thing. It used to be able to crush it with texting, and now that's kind of like, it's kind of tough with texting. And you can get in trouble. But so for the longest time, let's go up to October of 2023, I was doing texting. I would do cold calling, direct mail, RVMs, and I used to use Astro Blaster as well. It was an agent outreach, like, I don't remember if it was AI or not, but it was a good tool, and it would work. And like every one of those channels would get us like a deal a month. Okay. And I would spend probably $7,000. And it wasn't too bad, really, but it was really noisy in the business. It was like, I got these 15 agents that I can't get back to. I've got 32 missed calls from direct mail. I still got a cold call for 3 or 4 hours, or 2 hours. And just the acquisition team was just like burnt. You could tell, like, we're only buying homes at 70 cents on the dollar. And I was like, where's our 60%? Where's that 150% that we would get every other month? Like, right. It's like we could tell we were going through the motions.
Sure.
And what I ended up doing in October, literally October 1st, man, I shut every single thing off to a T. Even PropStream. I even deleted PropStream, which was stupid. I needed PropStream. But I deleted that. I just shut it all down. Cancel that credit card. Cut it up. I'm out, But, and I dedicated us to like an inbound model at that point. And so we have pursued PPC ever since. And so for the last 8-9 months, we've been running PPC only.
Okay.
And I don't foresee that changing for the rest of the year. At this point, I'm going to stay inbound.
Sure.
Only on.
And were you doing PPC in the past?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So but like $1,200 a month in Augusta, Georgia, like in Athens. So like,
right, maybe
2 deals, 3 deals a year is all it would land.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that with PPC. And I've been doing PPC since 2016. And I launched my first PPC campaign it was literally like the week of Christmas in 2016. And it was crazy because my PPC guy that runs my PPC, he still does it to this day. He started doing it back then. And he flipped the switch, and within an hour of him turning on because I vividly remember this. I'm at my parents' house, sitting on the couch. We're like having dinner this was like a few days before Christmas or something. And we're sitting on my parents' house on the couch, and I get a text from him. He's like, "Hey, I'm flipping the campaigns active." And then like an hour later after dinner, I get a lead. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I got leads like that? Oh, my God, that's amazing. Obviously, results not typical, But I've been doing that ever since then. There was a period where I turned off all PPC it was like probably for like 3 months back in, I don't remember when it was, 2019 or something like that for like about 3 months, and then I turned it back on. And then I switched PPC to my new probate resource model and just target specific probate keywords now. I don't do like the we buy houses and sell house, like the broad terms. I don't do those anymore, but I still do PPC to this day. And what most people don't realize is that you can spend too little on PPC and you can spend too much. So like depending on your market, you mentioned Augusta, Georgia and Athens, you have to look at the size of the market. Like I was marketing in Metro Atlanta. So we're a pretty big market, very expensive, cost per lead, pretty comparable with the major cities in the US. But like when you're in a tertiary market like Augusta, you don't have to spend as much money to get a deal out there as you do in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, if you set your budget too low, Google will just take your money and you'll never get any leads, you'll never get any deals. Or if you set your budget too high and you say, well, you know what, I'm going to give Google $15,000 a month, for PPC, and Google will be like, cool, well, I'll take 15, but I'll still only give you 6 deals, right? Or 6 leads, So people don't realize that when you're doing PPC, you got to like kind of know, depending on the market you're in, know what you're doing and know how to set your bids, because you can just piss money away and not get anything in return. So
that's absolutely, man. It's an interesting model. Can you see him walking out?
Yeah,
man. I told you they'd show up here.
And that's the firm you bought a few years ago, right? Yeah. And you've been there now, 4 years now?
Two, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been back home 4 entirely, but it's kind of cool, man. So we bought my grandparents' place, and this was my grandpa's woodshed. We're building my new office kind of way back there, but it's cool. Yeah. And he's been gone like 15 years, and he hung these tools up behind me. So it's cool, man. It's like neat to still be here and all of that. But regarding PPC, it's a really interesting thing, the way Google will like talk and work, and nobody knows how it's done, right? And that's why Google can do what they want. And in regards to, so we target like metros and 30 miles. So it's like Augusta, Macon, to Albany, Tifton, Valdosta, like Birmingham, Alabama, South Carolina. So like we hit these major metros, and so we have a lot of area where we can spend money. Yeah. And something that I've just learned, and I shared this with a guy a while back, because my mentor had told me this is about marketing, about spending. And what you were saying is exactly correct, because if you're just hitting Atlanta and you're only spending a certain amount of money, well, the cost per bid with We Buy Ugly Houses is not fair to everybody, right? Homevestors will outprice you in the market. Yep. Then you got Zillow. Then you got you have these guys with these unlimited budgets, right? Yep. So like we have budgets no matter what. Yes. The richest investor has a budget, but hedge funds don't, right? Because they can operate at losses. And so it's a different ballgame, but we target these different areas. And something I have learned about PPC is that it is so much safer to be in more areas if you can operate a remote model and to spend more. And I'm going to give you an example, and watch this. And this is like a Hermosi thing too, right? About ROAS and spend and whatnot. Would somebody rather, if I spent $10,000 a month, I'll probably get 1-2 deals a month. So most of my deals, we look at it in equity purchased, because we do a lot of wrapping, right? So we build equity every month and we keep it, but we got to look at it like that. And so it's 50 to 75K, I would say, in equity purchased off $10,000. So my budget's $27,500 a month. So we spend $27,500, and we usually buy 200 to 250 in equity, sometimes more, but I'd say that's probably pretty normal for us by the time we have deals fall through. Yeah. And so it's interesting when you look at that. Would you rather spend $10,000 and make 50, or would you rather spend 27 and make 250? Right. See the differences? Like you got a $40,000 profit margin, or you have a $200,000 profit margin. Yep. Now, granted, I do not make a $200,000 spread off of that every month, because everybody knows how real estate works. But it's really interesting when you start to look at that and understand it, because then it starts to talk to you a little bit. Now, not everybody has $27,000 that they can spend a month, let alone 10. Yep. But it's relevant, right? It's relevant. Once you're good at buying, you understand deal structure, and you know how to pitch, well, then I'm very confident in my marketing spend. I know they're going to give me something that we can do well off of. Yep. And so that's where I think real estate becomes beautiful. And it took me like 8 freaking years to get that before. You have to, you talked about ROAS, and Hermosi's books are great.
I listened to his newest one when we were driving back to Florida for spring break. Listen to that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, ROAS is important. You have to look at your return on ad spend is what ROAS stands for those who don't know, because it needs to be certain multiple, and you don't need to just look at what you're spending. You need to look at what you're getting in return for spending. So you have to be tracking your numbers regularly. And when I mentioned I turned off my PPC back, I think it was 2019 or something. The reason I turned it off is because over the span of like a few months, my ROAS like went in the tank, and I was like, okay, something's not right here. And that was right around the time. It was right around the time I remember when Open Door and OfferPad came into Atlanta and started advertising. My cost per click and cost per conversion doubled in the span of like
Do you remember what it was? Do you remember what it actually? Do you remember what it was? Your cost per conversion? I bet it was through.
It went from like 200 to like 400. I think.
Yeah.
Cost per conversion.
That's tough to play with, man.
Yeah.
It's real hard to get enough lead volume to be able to play with that.
Then you had to raise your budget. So all of a sudden, but what we did is my PPC guy is good. And I educated myself on PPC too. Like I listened to all the podcasts and watched a bunch of YouTubes. So I could probably run it on my own if I really, really needed to, because I know enough. I can go look at the campaigns, and I look at the campaigns. I get, push alerts from Google Ads every day. And I can look at the keywords, and sometimes they'll be like, hey, we need to add this as a negative keyword or whatever. So like I know enough to know what's going on, to know that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, but I'd rather just pay him to do it for me so I don't have to worry about it. And honestly, I'm grandfathered in his like cheap. If I told you what I'm paying for PPC, like
don't tell me.
Are you serious?
I don't want to.
Like that's so cheap. I'm grandfathered in because I've been with him since 2016.
Yeah.
So anyways, I look at that every day, and when the costs went up, what we did is we were like, all right, well, I don't want to play an Open Door and OfferPad sandbox, because after we went on a few appointments and we realized the type of people that were going to sell to Open Door or OfferPad are not necessarily always the same people that we need to target. So then we started looking at the keywords that they were coming in on Open Door and OfferPad on and excluding those and only targeting the other ones that made a difference. Yep. And that trimmed the budget down a little bit. And then you can also adjust your bids. We went broad last year or earlier this year with probate resource. I'm marketing all over the country, but only to specific probate terms and not anything else. And we noticed, we were looking at this last week. I had a call with my PPC guy or last month and said, hey, we're spending a lot of money on, because our number one search terms to come to our website are tax-related search terms regarding inheritance taxes and stuff like that. But our conversion rates are like next to nil on that. But those are top of funnel people. So when someone is searching that term, they need to get in our retargeting campaigns, because eventually they're going to want to sell a house. But right now they're not ready to sell a house. So I want to get in front of them, but I don't want to spend a lot of money to get in front of them. So we just basically adjusted our bid as low as Google would allow us to go. So we're still showing up for those people and they're still clicking on our site, but we're paying half of what we were paying a month ago to still get the same amount of clicks that we were getting before. Because like I mentioned before, Google would just be like, oh, you're going to bid this much? Oh, okay, well, we'll take that money and we'll show it to them for this money. But now we played with it and we dropped that number down to where basically we're still displaying they're still clicking and going to the site, and they're getting in our, they're getting pixeled or whatever and getting in our retargeting campaigns, but we're not spending as much money to acquire them up front. So because the value in those specific people is later on down the road when they are ready to sell that inherited property, we'll target them then. So you have to and we're getting really in the weeds with PPC here, I know.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for people who are looking, because everybody's jumping out of the text and the cold calling and getting into the inbound marketing. I've been doing inbound marketing since it wasn't cool. As I said, I've been doing direct mail and PPC forever and never stopped. But, that's super important to pay attention to your numbers all the time. But also don't get too granular where you're looking at your PPC like every other week and saying, well, this sucks this week, because it's going to ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You have to look at it over maybe a couple months, 2 month period. Don't like, if you get too granular with it, you're going to drive yourself insane because the numbers are going to suck this week and they're going to be awesome next week. And like, it's just, so you have to like take a moving average of things.
Yeah.
So
yep. It's neat, man. I mean, because your goal is because we're a marketing company, right? So your goal is to get somebody who says, hey, I think I'm interested in selling my home, or hey, I need help selling my home. And then it's your job to be good enough to buy. And so it's not hard to generate a lead. It kind of is, but it isn't, once you've been doing it long enough, like either pay somebody to figure it out. But if you know how to buy equity, then you can have great fulfillment in a company. Or, excuse me, you can have great inventory and awful fulfillment in a company.
Yes.
And you can still crush it.
Yep.
But if you have average inventory and great fulfillment, you're going to struggle forever.
Right.
And so there's so much power in knowing how to buy a house.
Yes.
And so many of us think that we know how to buy a house, and it's like, kind of.
No. And you guys went through Martinez and stuff back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too, right? That was revolutionary for me. And Jerry Green owns that company now, and it's still great material for buying houses the traditional way. But you mentioned earlier about pitching creative finance, and it's a pitch to a seller, and it's a different animal. And I've learned that my acquisitions guy, he pitches these things, but he's not good at it. So usually I end up pitching the creative, or I have my leads manager pitch the creative finance options to the sellers, because you like want to separate those conversations is what I've learned. So why don't you talk about, like, you mentioned pitching. So why don't you elaborate more on like a high level? You don't have to get in the weeds on this, but like how like you guys are pitching.
I'll touch on maybe the difference just for some of those that don't know, and then I'll tell you exactly how we do it. And so, so let's start with like pitching versus selling. And so to give you guys an idea of the difference, so selling would be going in and dropping off donuts to a paper company for 6 straight weeks, hoping that you get the opportunity to sell them paper at some point. Pitching is a organized tactic that you plan to leave with the agreement upon the pitch. And so whenever we have 2 different forms. So whenever somebody fills out a PPC form, it comes to us, we get it. We have something called a triage call. Mm-hmm. And so we are heavily, heavily, heavily script practiced. We stutter correctly. We pause correctly. And we are pitching without a doubt. And something I've instilled without a shadow of a doubt, it's always, I can tell with my act guys, when they finally believe that they are the kings and queens and the seller might get the opportunity to get their money, I notice we truly begin to buy homes deep. We begin to buy them on the terms that we want, and the business begins to operate like how it should, and they make a lot of money. But so what we do is whenever that lead comes in, we do something called a triage call. It's a 15 to 17 minute call, and we take them through every single bit, a piece of information that we want. And if we like what they had to say, then we will set up a perfect presentation with them. Mm-hmm. And a perfect presentation usually is like 45 to 48 minutes. And then we will either leave with the agreement or we will not. And so we don't give it an option to, let me think about it. It's either over or it's not. Yep. At that time, and we have rebuttals to, hey, I'd like to think about it. We have rebuttals to, I need XYZ to happen. Like whenever they give us a response, we have a perfect one that goes back to them. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always work. But what it does is it keeps us moving through the pipeline, because we know that, hey, I don't need to buy your house. I'll buy another house. I don't need your house. We'll pick up another one. And we just truly have that mentality and turn through them. And that's why we have a triage, and that's why we have a perfect presentation. So by the perfect presentation is set up within 50 minutes from the triage, and after that perfect presentation, we plan to leave with the agreement. And here's a neat thing. We do not give offers, ever, no matter what. And that has opened up our business, man, to some of the deepest buys I've ever seen in my life. I've had 2 this year. We're in the 40%. Including repairs. And I never even gave them the number. That's the number they stated.
Oh man, that's gold.
We never shoot ourselves in the foot by giving them a number. And the whole triage is teed up perfectly, frame-wise, right? Because we're pitching. It's a frame. Right. It's set up perfectly to where the perfect presentation, then we've created so much of these thought processes that we want to, that they're going to give us the best number that they possibly can. And gosh, I hope Travis accepts that number, is their hope. And so, and like, again, man, it doesn't work for 80% of the people that we talk to, but for 20% of the people that we do, right? We buy smoke shows of homes. We buy them sub 2 at no walkaway. We buy them at 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar, right, within them. And that no offer thing has changed what we do.
And they gave you the number. That's the key. Like, I remember one of the very first deals I did, I was doing my math and I calculated everything out, and I'm prepared to give this guy $50,000 for this house, right? Like, I was like, all right, I'm going to get on this call with him. Or actually, no, I think I like met him because he lived down the road or whatever. It wasn't that far away. And I go meet the guy, and I used one of the tactics I heard. It was like, okay, well, what's the least amount, you'd be willing to, and it's such a cheesy pitch, right? What's the least amount you'd be willing to sell the house for? And he said, probably like 35. And I was like, I don't know if I could do 35, but what about 30? And he said, yeah, I could do 30. And I was about to give him 50.
Yeah.
But I let him throw the number out first, and he gave me 35. And then I said, I don't know. And then I bought the house for $30,000. Good thing I didn't pay him $50 because I wholesale that house and I only sold it for like $42. So
yeah, lucked out on that one, right? But that's the beauty in it, man. Is like you're still able to give somebody exactly what they want. You framed the call entirely correct for them to give you the answer that they want to hear, and they know that if they don't give you the answer that you want to hear, they don't get your money,
right?
And it's the same thing as in like, back when we were dating, right? Whenever you were dating your wife and stuff, it's like, or dating women or whatever. For the women on the call, the men, it's like whenever people lean in, naturally somebody else tends to lean back.
Right.
And so it's the same thing with us. Like we're just leaning back the whole time. They can't help but want to lean in. Sure. And then they find themselves actually wanting to sell the home at that point. And then you just, it's incredible, the art form that comes behind it. And it's why we spend so much time like script working, rebuttaling, storytelling. The best book in the world is written in parables, right? The Bible. Yep. So we do the same thing within it. We tell the stories because they resonate with people.
Sure. That's awesome, man. Love it.
It's a neat
thing. That's gold, dude. Sweet. So why don't you talk about, we could sit here and talk all day, man, because, we go way back. So why don't you talk about, you had a partnership, right, with some buddies, and everyone says don't get into partnership with friends or family or whatever. And I've done partnerships with people, and all of them have worked out pretty well for me as long as we make it very clear, set boundaries and what happens and who does what and whatever. But they can cause some trouble for some people. So you had a partnership with 2 other guys. So it was like 3 of you, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So why don't you talk about that a little bit and some tips and tricks for people on partnerships, if you have any, and how that went?
Yeah. Yeah. So the company was Runway Properties. So we ran that thing for 4 years together. And then at year 4, it got to where it was just kind of easy we were buying like 60, 70 homes a year. Mm-hmm. And it got to where it was like, I could just buy 10 or 15 myself. And this just kind of seems like it would be easier. And so everybody started to kind of realize that. Right. It was like, hey, we've got about 40, rentals and owner finances because we just found out about sub 2 and about how to wrap. And so we ended up cutting the company up, and we all kind of went our own ways. Like Vic went into lending, Sam went into mobile homes at that time. Now he's in luxury, and I've always been like a buy and hold guy or a cash flow guy. And so that's been it's funny. That's never left me for some reason, but it was probably some of the funnest 3 years of my life that I've ever had, man. you had some of your closest friends that you were running around the country with, going to masterminds, hanging out late, and just the, confidence that you would give each other was really helpful for us, because these two guys that I'd partnered up with, like, they were just incredible people, and I felt like I was significantly below them in like intelligence level. They both had heavy acumens in the military and like just were good dudes at the end of the day. And man, they really helped me, I think, overcome some stuff that like I never would have been able to overcome without them. And so it without a doubt was like the biggest benefit. It taught me a lot of things too, because there ended up being, you have some rough moments in there as well.
Nobody agrees all the time.
Yeah, right. And I think it taught me also like how to do them better in the future. And so when people come to me and ask like, should I start a partnership? I still kind of answer with like, it's your call, man. Like, do I think you need them to get what you want in life? No. But if that's what you want to do today and it gets you started, then dude, just do it, man.
Right.
Just do it, because it's enjoyable, and splitting the profits with somebody it's fine. It's fine. Like if it's what feels right to somebody, I always encourage them to do it. But it was some of the funnest times I've ever had, man.
I still do partnerships on deals with people sometimes. Like if I, especially like, and I talked about this in my other podcast where I broke down my land deal where I bought my property and split it up and kept a piece for myself and built my house. If you want to check out the other podcast episodes there, I bought that with a partner because I had never done a subdivision of land before, and he had done a ton of them. So I said, hey man, I'm going to bring you in on this deal. I'm going to give you a little bit of profit. I want to take most of the profit. I'm putting the deal together, but I need you to be there to be my advisor and like kind of help me through and guide me through this process. So I learned how to do it. And I gave him a piece of the pie, and it was like almost no risk to him whatsoever. Right. And he got some profit out of it and he's happy. And we set up our terms, and that wasn't the first deal we'd done together, but like, I set that up and it worked out for both of us. Now I know how to do a subdivision of property and like do all that stuff. And I've actually done a couple others since then. And like I learned from that. So anytime I want to learn something new, I bring in a partner to like teach me, right? I find somebody who's doing the thing, right? Yep. So, and you did that with the Sub2 stuff. You got into the coaching program with I think I know the Brad you're talking about in Nashville.
Yeah. I just don't know if he's cool if I give his name out and stuff. So
that's fine.
Yeah. He's a great dude, though, man. I couldn't recommend what he does to people more, ever.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. And your partnership, you guys kind of just all parted separate ways. You and at that point, you guys were like all getting married at the same time, and like having kids, and life was changing, and you all just kind of
we'd all bought an RV. Yeah, dude. Yeah, we'd all bought an RV. We were gonna travel the country. We were gonna hit six parks in 6 months.
Yeah.
The second day after we'd sold our home, they let us stay in it for 3 days. Second day after, dude, and I literally pulled up in the RV. My wife comes out crying, holding a pregnancy test, and it was it was our second baby.
Yeah,
and it was Madison, and so it was. We tried so hard, but her first trimesters are just like, they just smoke her. And so we tried, and then just ended up coming back home. And I tried not to sell that damn thing, and I ended up selling it. Yeah, but it was awesome, man. So now we're back home in Southern Illinois. The entire team is there in Georgia. Actually, my acquisition guy is here with me in Illinois.
Okay,
and they're killing it, man. They're killing it. I try to just give them as big a runway as they want, and let them have have the lifestyle and create the culture they want to work at every day.
That's cool, man. Well, dude, so much information on the podcast today. Like, I really appreciate you coming on. And so many good nuggets. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, how can they reach out to you, Travis?
Yeah, so, Facebook's usually a pretty good way. I have an apprenticeship of my own called Equity Buyers now, where I just teach people how to do, like, the same stuff that we do.
Yeah.
I'll drop some of my information, like my Go High Level, like Calendly links and stuff.
Okay.
In there. But Facebook's pretty good, guys. I'll put some of my information in there too, so people can reach out to me. If you guys got questions, man, if you want to get started, like, it's just this business has been incredible, man, and like time in the seat definitely. You do lets you do things for other people that you never thought you could.
And that's why I'm doing this podcast, man. Like, I'm giving back all this information. And I learned so much of what I learned in this business through podcasts and books and YouTube stuff. So I was like, I want to give that information back now, because it's not rocket science what we do. Like, it's not, like it's the same stuff that everybody's been doing for decades. It just kind of evolves a little bit over time, you know?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on today, buddy. It was great chatting with you, and we'll have to get together sometime. And thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Appreciate it, man.
All right, guys, thanks for watching the Probate House Guy podcast. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, if you're interested in chatting with us about potentially buying some probate deals in your specific market, we actually do sell leads in certain markets. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to probatehouseguy.com and learn more. So thanks again for watching the episode today. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.